friends, it's Beth with the Chamber, and you're joining us with Coffee Break with the Chamber Chicks, enjoying our favorite cup of coffee. We're the good friend Ted Echols.
Hello.
We're so excited to have Ted with us today. Ted is a partner or guest, I don't know, what would you say, with Echols Law Group.
I'm owner of Echols Law Group.
That's right. Well, tell us what you do at Echols Law Group.
Hey, Echols Law Group is we've been practicing since 1994, doing estate planning, probate, and business representation.
Yes, it's fantastic. He has great insights, and we're going to talk about some of those today. But Kayla has a very important question for you, Ted. Very important.
Yes, Kayla.
Since the show is called Coffee Break with the Chamber Chicks, what is your go-to coffee order?
I love variety, guys, and so whatever the special is of the day, that's my go-to because I just love variety. And so if it's a dark roast, a light roast, I'll go with a special so long as there's no flavors.
Ah, no flavors.
No flavors.
Gotcha. I understand. I drink mine the same way. Very good. Well, all right. Well, let's just dive into it because our businesses have lots of, especially legal questions. Sometimes our folks get started into business and then realize that there are things we didn't think of. And that's why we do this great little short podcast. So if you could help to explain to us what kind of business structures there are and what would be right for different types of businesses, some examples of those.
Yeah, you'll find many people will just hang out a shingle or even a roadside stand, and that would just be a sole proprietorship, just doing business. And so that's a sole proprietor. I don't really recommend that for folks because you're not getting a lot of the tax benefits and the liability protection that you need. And so usually we want to look at an LLC or a corporation. With a small business, it would be an S corporation, which provide that liability protection that everybody needs for protecting everything else you own from the activity that's going on with that particular business. And so I usually let the accountant be the driver in deciding what's going to work from a tax benefit standpoint. Should it be an LLC? Should it be an S corporation? And practically speaking, on a day-to-day basis, when we're out there just trying to do our business, we're not really concerned, am I an LLC or am I an S corp? It's really driven by that. What's going to work best for me on a tax standpoint.
Gotcha. And you said, I'm sorry, I don't have a mic. I didn't have a mic. And you mentioned that the liability standpoint, we have some, particularly in our agriculture community, that have a different liability standpoint. So they should consider that.
They should. And, you know, when you start up a new business, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who start one business and then another and then another.
We have a name for you. We lovingly call y'all serial entrepreneurs.
It's
Hey,
true.
I love entrepreneurs. We come from a family of entrepreneurs, and it is good when you've got your business activity that you're doing and you just have this great idea. Hey, let's try this. It doesn't hurt to go ahead and create another one so that we keep this one the same. Its books are separately managed from the other one, and if you keep that separation, you can protect all that you've worked hard for over in this, we'll just call it the old business, and still satisfy that urge to try these new things without exposing everything. And that's, I wouldn't worry too much about that. And then if it doesn't work out, hey, that's what entrepreneurs do. They take risk. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Try the next thing.
That's right. Y'all are just out there solving problems.
Yes.
That's why we love you, because we also are problem solvers.
Enjoy that.
So tell us a little bit about the steps that are involved in forming a legal operating business.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more than most people know. And coming up with a name is really needs to be done early in the process because those missteps of thinking about what the name's going to be, getting signage, maybe T-shirts or having other stuff printed up.
Like a coffee mug?
Like a coffee mug. And then find out once you open your doors, you get that letter from, it's a nice lawyer probably.
Cease and desist,
yes,
right?
that says, hey, you can't use this name anymore, and now you've got to go back and start over. So making sure your name is available is important. Thinking about the business license, where you're going to operate, the location. Those are more practical things. They can talk with you guys about that. From a legal standpoint, we can help with the name with the Secretary of State, and then determining that entity choice that we were talking about earlier, very important, depending on the type of activity you're doing. And then drafting those articles of either organization or incorporation, then creating the bylaws that go along with that. Those are things you'd probably want to get the assistance of a lawyer to do. And then and all of this is before you've sold the first item. So you're just getting all of that done, and once you're incorporated, you'll have to get a separate EIN number from the IRS. You know, they want to know that you exist. And then you can get the business license activity going. And if you are fortunate enough to have something you need to protect from an intellectual property standpoint, either a process or a design, those are things that you would go ahead and apply for early on, because things seem to happen when people notice your success. All of a sudden they might try to imitate it, and we want to protect that so that you're not on the outside looking in when they're successful in it. We would like for you to be sending the letter, not you receiving the letter, if somebody else tries to take your idea. So those are all things to get started even before you've sold the first thing. And of course, once you're ready to hire employees and offer products, then there's certain other governmental things you'll need to do locally. But
yes, and depending on who you're doing business with, you have a different structure if you're doing business with the federal government or even local governments. You have to have a certain structure, so that's very helpful to engage Ted and his services.
That's right. And you know, it is even more important on this organization standpoint that if you have a partner or you've brought in a lot of times friends are getting together over coffee like this, and they say, you know, that is a great idea. Why don't we just pull some money together and try it? Well, a great time to have well-drafted documents when you're still on friendly terms. Then you can agree on everything. It is not nearly as easy when things start going south. And now people take sides and positions, and it is hard to find an agreement for anything. And so we want to get those agreements, how to undo this at the early stage rather than litigating it in the Superior Court. We don't want that.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Nobody does. Well, that really is a great segue into our next question. You know, what are the horror stories? What are the real life consequences of not following a good legal structure?
Yeah, and boy, there's so many different ways that things can go wrong. You know, most businesses really don't last very long. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate. And so the horror stories can be leveraging too much, borrowing too much money, and having the business fail, but now you're still continuing to pay for this failed business for years and years. That's a horror story. Just thinking about, how much am I willing to risk? How much can I afford to risk? And taking those steps and going at it incrementally instead of leveraging so much, and then the idea not be as popular as you thought it was going to be. Now that's something that you voluntarily done, where you've just borrowed some money. Involuntarily, horror stories also exist where something goes tragically wrong and somebody gets hurt, or there's damages that occur not because of anything that necessarily you did intentionally, but And that's where the liability protection comes in, so that what's exposed is what's in the business, but not necessarily all of the rest of your stuff. And we don't want that to happen, because
Lose your home.
yeah, you're an entrepreneur. We want you to live to fight another day and create another business, because we need
Become
you.
a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's right, because we need you. That's how our lives are all better, because of other people's great ideas and willingness to take risk.
Big companies never started out as big companies.
That's right.
They all started out as little ones.
That's right. So those are probably two of the most. Now I can tell you on a personal level, horror stories, and I would call them tragic, is where friends begin together, and then because of activity that goes on with the business and its failure, they're not friends at the end. And that's just a sad thing, and it doesn't have to happen that way. If they've planned for it, the possibility of it, and they just know that it could fall apart, then the unfolding of it doesn't have to be relationship ending.
That's true. Same for families.
That's right.
Same for families.
So let's talk a little bit about nonprofits. In our community specifically, and maybe this is not the same in every community, but in our community we see a lot of, I'm just gonna start a nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about the difference in a nonprofit and a business from a legal standpoint, and the things that you really got to do to make sure you're abiding by the rules.
So nonprofits, there's a lot to talk about with nonprofits. Nonprofits are in the code. They have a whole section just for nonprofits, and it is designed for the public good as opposed to being for private profit. So that's the huge distinction there, and sometimes those get a little bit blurred because people want to start a nonprofit, but they want to profit from the activity, and that's okay. For example, pastors work for nonprofits, churches, but they've got to live. They need to make some money. So those two can coexist, but generally the underlying purpose of a nonprofit is to benefit the public. And so when you're thinking about that, then the articles of organization are created so that those are the purposes. It's a public purpose as opposed to private. With a for-profit corporation, they're going to lay out, I'm going to construct houses, I'm going to develop land, I'm going to put together subdivisions or shopping centers. But with a nonprofit, it's going to have some public purpose. Now, the Secretary of State, we have a great Secretary of State's office, and they have some form, if you will, articles of organization or incorporation that will, in fact, satisfy the Georgia requirements. And if you just go online and do those, you'll become a nonprofit in Georgia. But that's not the end of the story for a nonprofit.
So much more.
Because most people who do nonprofits want to be tax exempt. That's really what they're trying to get to. And tax exempt, and the way we're talking about it, is the federal government with the Internal Revenue Code. They want to be tax exempt. And unfortunately, the form documents with the state of Georgia, they don't satisfy what's necessary to be tax exempt. So you really need to get a lawyer to help you, because even at that early stage of just thinking about putting together your documents, it has to be written with that purpose in mind, becoming tax exempt. And so satisfying the Internal Revenue Code requirements is crucial, or you're going to spend a lot of money and several months getting all the way to that point and then being rejected. And I don't want that for anybody. So you really need to draft those with that in mind. And then who's going to be the board of directors? A lot of times with a for-profit, it's the owners. They're going to be the board of directors. They're making the decisions. After all, it's their money that they're spending. But with a nonprofit, we're typically talking about other people's money. And so who is it? Is it going to be some community members? Most of the time they're not paid. So who's got the time to do it and the willingness over, we'll just say the long haul, a certain amount of time to devote their time and energy for this public purpose. And so identifying them, the IRS is going to want to know who they are, and so you have to identify them early on. And you notice we're doing this all the time, and we haven't yet taken the first dollar. You know, we haven't done the first thing yet. And so we want to get that organization formed. We've got to identify the purpose that we're forming it, talk to the IRS and communicate with them to make sure that we're satisfying their requirements. And then once those things are done, you can go out and carry on your public purpose. And that sounds exhausting, doesn't it? Just to get going. But
There's a lot to it.
We had to start a second one here at the chamber. Our foundation is a 501c3, and there's a lot to it. It's a lot of work.
There is, and I don't want to discourage. It's just great that we have people wanting to devote their time and money for nonprofit purposes. And the next limitation, if we have time to talk about that, is that you really are constricted in the type of activity you can do. There's only certain things you can do, and more importantly, from the IRS standpoint, there are definite things you cannot do. And so you can't, for example, if you're forming a nonprofit because you really want to support particular candidates for office,
a different thing.
Yeah, you can't do that. So
That's called a political action committee, and not the same.
And if you violate those rules like that, they're going to jerk that tax exempt status away from you, and then all of your donors are going to be really upset if they thought they were going to get this tax exemption, or deduction.
That's a great point.
So understanding what you can do and can't do is equally important with a nonprofit.
That was good stuff. Very good. And I think we talked about proper steps, covered all those things, and how to make sure that you're properly set up. But now our last question, and it's our favorite. So
Even more than the coffee question.
tell us how being part of the chamber has contributed to your business.
Hey, I love the chamber, as you know, and I went through Leadership White. That was one of my favorite things, just getting to spend time with other leaders here in White County, as we learned about each area, whether it was education, utilities. The agriculture day is a great day. I love that day. So that would have to be it. The opportunity the chamber has provided to meet all the folks who really make this community what it is, a great community.
And you are such a great addition to our community. Thank you for joining us and being a big part of what we do here at the chamber. We have other sessions coming up soon, but we just want to thank you, Ted, for taking the time today. Have a little coffee with us.
Thank you.
Hey, Ted, how'd you like these new swanky chairs we got?
They're very comfortable. It's almost like sitting on a lamb.
So if you too would like to sit on a lamb, come be on our podcast.
We're going to quote you on that, Ted. Okay. It's like sitting on a lamb. Ted Echols, probably. Well, thanks, y'all. We look forward to doing more podcasts in the future, and thanks for stopping by to have coffee with your chamber chicks. Have a great day.
Bye.